another Cozy Things chat. I had a bit of a hiatus and I'm really excited to bring it back, especially in this, we're getting into the festive season. I'm not sure precisely when this will go up, but later November or sometime in December. And I am joined by one of my Cloak and Dagger Christmas co-hosts, which is Mel. Thank you so much, Mel, for joining me.
Well, that's a pleasure to be here. You know, I have been wondering when you would invite me, so I'm really pleased that you finally did. I was sort of like, not that I was keeping looks on my calendar, how long it took you, but sort of did.
Yes, no, you were definitely one of the people that I thought I have to have you. And Mel has a booktube channel, which is Melanie Martin. And she's also active on Instagram under Mel Martin Photo. And I will link everything, of course. And she has some beautiful photography that she shares on her Instagram. And then also through her Instagram in the link tree, you can find she has a blog, which I really enjoy reading. And it is also down to Mel that I started watching Korean dramas. So
that's true. Yeah, I made you, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah, that has been such an enriching part of my life. And my husband and I, our kind of Venn diagram of things that we can watch together is few and far between, but Korean dramas have been something that we have enjoyed together.
I love that.
Yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. So I'm eternally grateful for that. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing your list. And it's just been so fun hosting Cloak and Dagger Christmas together. We like mysteries kind of all the time, but
definitely, yeah.
I'm
on a major mysteries. The only thing I'm reading really consistently right now, apart from some, like nonfiction, and I had a very strong nonfiction year. But in terms of fiction, it's been mostly, mysteries for me for months now, and I'm just really enjoying it. So I will talk about that in a little bit as well.
Oh, perfect. So I guess we can dive into your list. What is the first thing on your list?
Well, for me, like one of the coziest things is crafting. Yeah. So like not just, not just knitting or something like that, but the crafting as a whole, the making of something and, the playing, I guess, as well, with trying new things is something that gives me incredible joy. I find relaxing really quite difficult, due to the ADHD. Relaxing is not really a thing my brain allows me to do. But I think crafting is one of those kind of things that brings me as close to a chilled out, relaxed state that I ever will be. I always say it's like a little bit like my meditation, and it's combined with number 2, which I will talk about. It is perfection then. But crafting is really, like the best thing ever. You probably relate to that because I know you're a knitter, you do embroidery, right? So, you probably know what I mean, that it is incredibly relaxing and cozy. And, I like to make also things like for Christmas that's coming up, we always do our wreath, and things like that. So I do craft a lot, At the moment, I'm taking part in 24 days of sashiko. Sashiko is an embroidery technique. It's like I have to find the perfect angle.
Wow.
So you learn a new stitch or a combination of stitches every day. I'm terrible at embroidery. And I'm trying to get better at it. It's a mental block because my grandmother was always very, very harsh with criticism. And she once burned one of my embroideries that I did. That was too bad. She threw it in the fire. So it's just like, so it took me until this time to trying to get over it. Yeah.
Sorry, is sashiko, is that Japanese? Because it sounds Japanese.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like, it's less sort of like, a lot of like the visible mending movement is using the set of stitches to, mend items, and is used for that. But, the great thing about Instagram, she's called Sashiko Lab. And, what she does is she gives you a lot of history and background. So you actually understand where that all comes from. So you're not just thinking, oh, it's just embroidery or something, that you really understand the culture and the depth of that kind of ideology behind it. is fascinating. And because I'm not very good at it, it's actually even more cozy, if you see what I mean, because there's no pressure, this doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to be used in any way. I'm not making a jumper that I will have to wear. Yes. It's an old piece of linen that I'm using to stitch it on. It's embroidery thread I bought in a charity shop. It's basically as low level, and that's so cozy. That's super cozy.
Yeah, this is making me think now. You're hearing it as you watch this. Maybe we should host a Knit and Listen during Cloak and Dagger Christmas, which would just be a Voxer group where people, who are making anything that they want, could chat about what they're making.
Yeah, that would be lovely. We've done that before, haven't we? So
we have. Yeah, you came up with the idea first.
Yeah.
It was during
Did I?
Oh. You did, yes. And we read Adam B during Victober.
Oh, yes, we did, didn't we? Yeah. Yes.
But I love that idea of, you are not expecting to know how to do things in a very pristine kind of manner at first. And that is my oldest struggle. Any new concept in school, he thinks he's supposed to be proficient at it immediately.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea of just doing something for the pure love of doing it. And then knowing, eventually you'll get the hang of it. But for now, just for the love of doing it.
I think as adults, we just forget to play, and I think essentially craft is just an adult version of play.
That's so true.
And, and we quite often forget that, you do get things wrong and that things don't look neat and don't look pretty. And I think, sometimes with social media, when you see everyone's perfect kind of crafts, it can be very like, when you're sewing something and, the seam is not quite straight, or one, like has happened to me recently, like one shoulder was slightly higher than the other. Only I know. But, you look on Instagram and everyone's stuff is perfect. And so I'm always like trying to remind myself actively that it doesn't have to be perfect. That even like, like my grandmother would sew things that weren't that great. I remember one carnival, in Germany, we have carnival in February, like Mardi Gras, kind of thing. And she made me an outfit and the seam ripped during the party because she was in a hurry. And so the seam allowance wasn't wide enough for vigorous playing. And so my costume, the one side ripped, Did I still have great time at the party? I definitely did. So, it really doesn't matter. So, yeah. But I love it in particular because I'm crossing over to number 2. Excellent. I love crafting in particular, as you said, with the Knit and Listen in combination with audiobooks.
Yes.
It's one of the greatest things to do in the world is to stitch away, to do crochet or knitting or sewing or whatever it is and listen to an audiobook. I don't know anything else that is cozier than that combination.
Yes.
Ever,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something about the repetition and the gentle motion, that you're continually doing. It really, there's something kind of sacred about it. And I love thinking about women from the past, working on handicraft. And and I mean, I think it's kind of it's the 21st century version of, someone reading aloud to a group or telling a story
absolutely,
to a group.
Yeah. And I always, like to bring it back. It's like, when you read to children, how quiet they get and how calm they get. And for me, I still have that, it's like when someone reads me something and, and I don't think it matters if it's an audiobook or someone reading out loud, which I also love. But it's just really nice, it's sort of like a proper break from everything else because it's just you listening to the story that you're being told and working on whatever you're working on. And I don't know anything cozier. And especially now with winter, I put the open fire on, I make a fire and, and I have fairy lights in my living room. My husband always calls our living room my cave. Yeah. I don't believe in overhead lighting. Yeah, I don't like harsh lights.
No, I
And
agree.
so I have loads of occasional lamps and fairy lights. And my husband always says, oh, you're in your cave. And that's admittedly the place I'm the happiest in, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there is something about soft lighting that just makes and warm lighting that makes the place feel much cozier.
Yeah, no, I have long figured that out. I can do overhead lighting if I have to clean, yeah, but I can't do overhead lighting for anything other than that. Yeah.
Yes. No,
it's just
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Now, audiobook series that both you and I particularly enjoy are the Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Brinspear. Now, I do think should Maisie sound as posh as she does in those audiobooks?
That's a good question. I think she would, because she would have learned how to improve her diction in order to blend in.
It's kind of a masking that she does.
I think it's a kind of a masking thing. And, you know, it's just like, and especially like, you know, she obviously when she was little, she would have had like a London accent. East London kind of accent, but I think when she was sort of sought out and raised beyond her station, so to speak, she would have learned. There was no chance she would have been able to go to Oxford or Cambridge. Which one did she go to? Girton College, I think it was.
It's been so long since that like stage of her education. I can't remember.
I think she went to Girton, and you know, so there was no way she would have done it with a pronounced accent.
I see.
It would have been impossible to be admitted. You know, it's like English people to this day, it's like I have a lot of neighbors who find it very, very bewildering if there's anyone with an accent on TV. And which is funny because obviously there's loads of regional accents all over the UK. But one of my elderly neighbors, he's very, very upset, especially when it's someone from the north, you know, even further north than we are, and really upset about it, you know, like when they have accents. It's like, why did they let the Yorkshireman on TV? What's that Yorkshireman on TV? Me, it's like, well, you know, people have accents. You know, why
exist?
Yeah, so it's okay. It's just like, no, it shouldn't be allowed. In a drama, maybe. But not on the news.
It's so funny. Yeah, that is it's kind of the opposite in America, whereas the southern US kind of, I know a couple people because I grew up in Mississippi that they wanted to be in newscasting, and they were told that you have to lose the southern accent if you want to be on television. So that is funny, kind of the expectation that people have. Kind of there's this standard accent that is acceptable for intelligent people, you know, in television.
It's like, and I've been listening to an interview like a few years ago that the BBC did with Christie, and you know, so I absolutely loved that interview because she was such a prickly pear, and I love that about her. And and the newsreader, that kind of English is unbelievable. You know, not a newsreader. I mean, he sounds like a newsreader. He was obviously just interviewing her. And, you know, but the way he speaks with those kind of clipped tones and very precise and very clear diction, you know, no one speaks like that anymore. But it was really hilarious, and has definitely softened up, and people speak a little bit more normal now. But,
yeah, I always struggle. Have you seen any movies with Katharine Hepburn?
Yeah.
I really struggle with her voice.
Yeah.
It's pretty over the top.
Yeah, no, it's funny as well, because obviously she grew up in the Netherlands, didn't she? So it's like it's learned as well. So it's like, you know, it wasn't her native language. She learned it. So
yeah, it is very funny.
Yeah.
Well, shall we move on to the third cozy thing?
The third thing is something that I personally cannot do at home is wear my outdoor shoes. I need thick socks and I need slippers. And I don't know whether this is sort of like a German thing. Because I know a lot of people here in the UK wear their outdoor shoes in the house. And we don't. and I can't, because not only because I don't like the fact that you wear your outdoor shoes in the home, but because I would not be able to be comfortable if I kept my sneakers or boots on in the house. It would always feel like I would have to go somewhere again. And, so I love thick socks, in particular, alpaca thick knitted socks. They're a luxury item that I prescribe to, and really warm slippers. I live in a very old house as well. The floors are cold, so it's also a necessity. But I love that. So it's the ultimate luxury that you can afford. Yeah, so kind of thing to me.
That is really lovely. And I do think it's a rarer American household that people wear slippers in the house. And I remember being so charmed by a friend who had me over, and she just had like a basket of slippers for guests. And you would go in and take your shoes off. And also just for cleanliness, it makes sense. I mean, this is Asian countries know this. It just makes a lot of sense to do. And
I think on many levels, it's like the cleanliness is definitely for me a factor as well. I don't like the idea of traipsing all that dirt all through the house. But also I think it is a clear divide between like you're home now. You're home now, and now you can relax. It's kind of like a transition. And for us, it was always like, you would put your shoes off as soon as you walked in through the door. And I know, no one actually of my friends. And plus, we lived in an apartment. The people underneath you would have really complained if you would wear your outdoor shoes, as well, because it's really loud. And so I just really like it. And, and we all three, it's just like we come home, shoes off, slippers on. Love it. And I do also have slippers for friends, and thick slipper socks when people come over. So
that's so nice. I also I think it's funny too how much it is like you do this, you take off your outdoor shoes and you put on your indoor shoes. In Korean dramas, when like somebody's trying to get in the house quickly, they'll still always pause to take off the outdoor shoes and then put on the slippers. That's how much of the routine it is.
No, that's true. It is. Even if I forget something before I go out, I will take the shoes off again. And then have to put the shoes back on. But I always do that. And I do forget a lot of things all the time. Having to check the oven for the third time. Did I really switch it off?
And I love that too, you saying it's the clear divide. I'm home now. It's like how they say don't work in your bedroom, because then it will give you, it's not good sleep hygiene. So I really like that, this clear divide. I actually, my slippers finally gave out last year, so I should get a new pair.
I tell you, it's like the ultimate luxury. It's like one of those things, where you can get yourself something that you really like, and it doesn't cost that much money, but it feels super special. It's like a cozy thing that's very achievable to do.
That is not, it seems, kind of across the social strata, many people can afford slippers.
No, absolutely. Then number 4, and that was really funny because I had a chat with a friend yesterday about this, and how important it is, especially in times of turmoil and upheaval seemingly everywhere, and that is food. And we were talking about how certain things can sort of restore peace for a moment when you cook certain meals, like not all the things we eat all the time, but certain meals, the cooking and the preparing of them and the sitting down and eating them with your family can really feel like a momentous occasion. And for her, it was yesterday, she was making like a soup, like a thick, creamy soup, and she had baked some bread, and she and her husband were eating it. And we're chatting, and I was saying, well, I'm going to make a risotto tonight because it's so cold and rainy and windy. And I just really love eating risotto at this time of year because it is the ultimate comfort meal for me. And so food, not all food all the time, but certain things. Like for me, it's risotto, or like it's been a busy week, but I have all weekend off, and I can like start Saturday with making homemade waffles.
Oh, yes.
Or, I have time to bake a cake for Sunday afternoon.
Yes.
Those kind of things, they're just really, really special and incredibly cozy. And nothing really beats sitting down with your family to eat for dinner. I mean,
Yes.
I can, no matter how many years pass, we still pretty much every night eat together at the table, with the exception on Saturdays when we have pizza night and watch a movie together while eating. But apart from that, we eat together at the table that one time a day. And it is the coziest thing. You can light a candle, you can close the curtains, shut the world out, and it's just perfect. So
I've heard the term used before, life-giving.
yeah.
And also something that's really encouraging. I've heard for mental health for teens that in families that sit down together, hopefully, the majority of nights, and eat dinner together, that has a big impact on mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, it's just this reliable thing. And there are certain meals, and risotto is one of them, that it's the act of cooking it that I find.
Yeah.
I love to put on like Ella Fitzgerald, and listen to her while I'm cooking. Or Coq au vin. That's one that for me, it's just
I remember you making that for the first time a few years ago.
Yes.
And how it instantly became your favorite thing ever, right? Yeah.
It really did. I cried the first time I had it.
Yeah.
Which I told my French friend, and he was like, yes, that's French food.
Yeah.
It just, now it's Peter's favorite meal. That's what he picked for his birthday meal. So it definitely is, it's a family favorite. And I don't really make
you have it with mashed potatoes or both potatoes, or
we just have it on its own.
Oh, nice.
It hadn't occurred to me to do with potatoes though, because that sounds really lovely.
I would need some bread to mop up the sauce though.
Well, okay. If I think ahead, I get like frozen rolls, because I haven't ever made a decent yeast roll. So with the frozen rolls. Have you ever seen the movie Babette's Feast?
I have many years ago. Yeah.
That's a great food film.
No, there's also a lot of French films center around food, but there's also a great the title escapes me now, German movie, which is about food and eating and family eating. I will have to remember the title.
I would love to know. Maybe
it's just like I really do love food as that kind of concept of share together. A few years, like when the kids were little, a few friends of mine and we started something called the Bearwood Pantry, which was a food cooperative, which was all about like sourcing affordable organic or locally grown produce and sort of sharing it with the community in an affordable way. And we did food festivals and all sorts of things. And one feature of our food festivals were, apart from the fact that we wanted to have things at every price level, because quite often food festivals is just very privileged, and very expensive. But we wanted to have something that is, even if you have no money to spend, you can come and still enjoy your time. But we also had something which was the communal table. So instead of having little tables, we had like one really long spread out table in the church hall, where everyone was forced to sit with each other at this table and eat the food that they have bought. And it has been one of the most amazing experiences. I've always been a big believer that if you break bread with the community that you live in, you will grow closer as a community. And the eating together that you see in movies of big tables in the countryside, and most of us don't have families like that, but it doesn't mean that this act of eating together isn't important, and I think it is very important. And it was an incredible experience seeing people that never met each other sit at this table together,
Wow.
living in the same community, having great conversations and building friendships. And that was like, you know, so yeah, I like that a lot as well.
Wow. That sounds so special. How cool.
Yeah. So number 5 is also like one of my favorite things in the world, and that is coming home after a walk in cold weather.
Oh,
it's the best feeling, right? It's just like there's something so wonderful. It's been windy or rainy, or you got soaked, and then you come home and you change into comfy clothes and you snuggle up on the sofa, and it's just like nothing can, like, you know, if I could bottle that feeling to pull out at will, of the moment you walk back in through your front door, it's just perfect. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think in recent years, I've been more willing to take walks in the wintertime. And it makes you even more fond of home. And I loved, so, you know, 2 days ago was Halloween, and it poured buckets of rain the entire time.
Same here.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
And so Arthur was wearing a Scooby-Doo costume, and he was good for about 40 minutes. And then, you know, he's 4. And so then he was like, I'm tired, I'm cold. So I said, okay, you know, we'll walk you back. We were in my parents' neighborhood. And so we dropped him off, and then Peter and I continued on. And when we got back, he was sitting on a quilt in just his underpants, because his costume had gotten so soaked, in front of the fireplace and eating candy. And he was just as happy as a clam. So
that's the kind of feeling, isn't it? It's just like the kind of like perfection.
Yes.
Yeah, he wouldn't have enjoyed that candy as much as if he hadn't walked around.
Got wet. It's so true.
Then,
yes,
it's
definitely those contrasts.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
that's
also
a great
funny, isn't it? Halloween candy. I always think the candy that kids collect during Halloween, they love that more than any other candy throughout the year, right?
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but it is definitely more special. And a lot of the stuff in the, I don't know how it is with you, but it's rubbish.
Yes.
It's like, you know, they would not touch it. If you were to have it at home, it would not get eaten. But my kid always used to eat the most, like lollipops where you think, oh God, you know.
Like root beer flavored Dum-Dums, which are little lollipops. And there's this one, you probably have an equivalent in England called Pixie Sticks, and it's just sugar powder. It's like flavored. And it's just why? But I think it's like they feel like they, you know, hunted and gathered the Halloween candy.
It must be something deep-seated, like I've earned this candy, you know. It's also, I think, because it's kind of weird, isn't it, going up to people's houses, knocking on doors and things like that. A lot of kids have to overcome their shyness, and, you know, and in order to do that, I always love it when the kid knocks on our door and then the parent stands on the pavement, and then it's like a stage whisper about what to say next.
Don't just take the candy and run. You have to greet them and say
exactly. Say thank you. It's just like, so funny, but I love it. I mean, it's one of my favorite holidays. I love Halloween.
It's so fun. So fun.
Number 6 on my list is Scotland. Unsurprising. I love Scotland, as many people know. One of my favorite places, and for me, Scotland is always very cozy no matter what time of year we go. Obviously, the weather in the UK, the more north you go, the more unpredictable it can be. There's certainly a lot more rain in Scotland than we have in England here, and you know, it can be very blustery. But again, you have that combination of, like, you go out for a walk, you do something, you get wet, you come back to your holiday cottage, you put the fire on. It's sort of like number 5, just in Scotland, you know, which makes it infinitely better. I love Scottish accents, you know, I love the Scottish countryside. You know, I hope no English people will take that the wrong way if you're watching, I'm sorry, but it's a fact. The further north you go on this island, the nicer the people become.
Wow.
And so we always say sort of like by the time you're in Northumberland, which is sort of just before Scotland, or Cumbria on the other side, depending on which side you drive up, people will get nicer, 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 nicer. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And it was always like very marked as well when you had a little kid. Because suddenly people would notice the child and would be like, try to accommodate the child in the pub. Yeah. And we had this incredible experience one year just outside Stirling, and we stopped over because we were going further into the Highlands, and Dharma was really little, and long drive, was just like, so we broke it up and we stayed near Stirling in a little B&B that had a pub attached to it. And Dharma's always been a little bit of a interesting eater. Yeah. And so they didn't have it on the menu, but Dharma wanted baked beans on toast. And the lady went to the co-op and got a can of baked beans, came back and made Dharma baked beans on toast. That's the difference. This is like that will happen to you in Scotland.
Well, I have seen, you've shared pictures of Dharma as a toddler, and it was absurd, just the level of cuteness.
Yeah.
I mean, the cheeks and oh.
Yeah, very, very cute. Yeah. Still is, just teenage level.
Yes, a different kind of cute. Yeah.
Kind of cute.
So I know
Scotland.
A few years ago you had, and maybe it's still kind of ongoing of a project, but Read Scotland.
Yeah.
Can you, off the top of your head, think of some of the books that really stood out to you from that?
I really, really love the Oscar de Muriel mystery series with Frey and McRae. And I love them on audio. I think the first one, like so often in series, is a little bit of, like there's some lengths to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I like the way he plays with, is it supernatural or is it not supernatural? Mm-hmm. I like the kind of comedy that comes out from this English boy being sent up to Edinburgh with this very, very Scottish person. It's very wacky, in many places, but I think the narrator does an incredible job of lifting the books as well. That often happens in audiobooks, that a book you might as a reader not find that enjoyable, but the narration is that great that it becomes a complete different thing. And that's certainly the fact for me. So I really love those. They're set in Edinburgh. I also really love Susanna Kearsley's books that are set in Scotland. Unfortunately, her latest installment was one of my big disappointments of the year. I was really looking forward to it, and and I read it all, but it was a slog. It felt like she just had to fulfill her 3-book deal. And so it was a bit sad. I didn't really like it, but I like her others. I think you read quite a few of them as well, haven't you?
She's wonderful.
Yeah, so obviously I love Rosamunde Pilcher's books that are set in Scotland. I love the Hamish MacBeth series, a lot. I find the humor that she has and the kind of observation of small community living.
I'm really excited. I finally, the latest Agatha Raisin books, unfortunately, they're written by someone else, under her name, and they just aren't as good. She's so clever. So I'm finally going to treat myself, and during Cloak and Dagger Christmas, try a Hamish MacBeth on audio. I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, it's like I really enjoy them, and it's like I think she captures something of that kind of small community where everyone knows everyone and everyone knows everyone's business, but at the same time doesn't quite know everyone's business, and the secrets are just well buried, well hidden, but never quite out of reach. They will pop up, and I think she really captures that. But I have like a long list. I also really like nature writing set in Scotland as well. it's like I'm reading Outlandish at the moment, which is a non-fiction book.
Ooh.
And where he talks about extreme landscapes and
Oh, wow.
and sort of like, like England has an area in Kent, which is technically a desert. And,
Oh.
and so, people wouldn't associate England with a desert, but the kind of geographical description of a desert, it is a desert. And the same goes for Scotland. Scotland has an area that has a tundra. And you wouldn't, maybe it's easier to believe that Scotland could have a tundra, but, it's not necessarily on the latitude that we're at that you would expect a landscape like that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to do with man-made infliction on the landscape. And I'm finding that hugely fascinating. So I like books like that look deeper at the landscape and the people and the history and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I am finally going to, this November, Nonfiction November, I'm going to read The Old Ways by Robert McFarlane. It's going to happen.
Lovely, yeah. Are you listening to it, or
I'm going to listen to it?
It's a wonderful audiobook. It's
fabulous.
it's one of those kind of comfort audiobooks that I will put on to listen to again, because I love that narration a lot. I think it's really well read. So yeah,
very cool.
So number 7 on the cozy list, and that is running errands with a really good friend. I think friendships are these days often conducted as the thing where you have to go out for drinks and where you have to go out for meals, and where you have to kind of like make almost like time that you don't necessarily have if you're a parent, in order, and like happening at times as well where you might be too tired. Yeah. I always value, and I always know I have a real friend if you can run errands with them. If you can say, I need to go grocery shopping. Do you need to go grocery shopping too? Can we go together? I need to go and sort out these things. Do you want to come? I need to go to IKEA. Do you want to come along? I find that is the cozy level of friendship when you have achieved that with a person, that you can do that.
Yeah.
They're like, they're like your married best friend. Yeah. Because you could, it's like really, it's a test of a friendship when you can do that with a person. And it is incredibly cozy and comforting when you can do that, so yeah.
Yeah, it makes a mundane task a lot more just life softening.
Yeah. Just like one of my friends once said, it's just like, it's like once you've reached I need to run to the drugstore. We want to come level, you're good,
Yes.
So
yeah. Oh, that's so nice. It makes me think about my one friend and I, when we would go to the craft store, our husbands would be like, now, can you please, can you cap it at like 3 hours? Do you think you could come out of the craft store before that?
Yeah. It's like, and it is fun, isn't it, when you can do that? It is really like brilliant.
Yeah.
So number 8 is, obviously I like TV as well, as I like K-drama. And one of the things that I find also very cozy and that people might not know is like, I really like factual programs a lot. So like history programs, documentaries of all sorts of things. I always like to find out things. I have a perpetual running list in my head of dinner party facts that I never get to pull out because I don't want to bore people to death, but that I could potentially bring out because I have watched a lot on certain topics. When I get interested in a topic, I will try and find programs about that topic as well. And I can spend really great times going down those rabbit holes. At the moment, my obsession is, again, with a British historian, David, oh God, I'm going to say his name wrong now. It doesn't matter. His name is not important right now because I can't think of the last name. But it's the history of houses. So basically, he visits a house And then he talks about who built it, who lived in it, and all the people and what happened to them, and to the present day. And this is now the 4th series, I think, of it. And it is the most wonderful thing. Yeah. Because I have researched meticulously the history of my house. Yeah. And I know exactly who first lived in it, and who lived in it throughout its period, and what happened to them, and to the present day when we moved in. And I am fascinated by that, because we often look at history through the wide angle lens of all the events, all the big things,
the battles.
And we very much forget that there's people who lived through it, people very much like us. For example, in my house, when this was built in 1902, a family of 3 moved in, a mother, a father, and a child. And, so very much like my family. Yeah. And he went off to the Great War in 1914 and never came back.
Wow.
Yeah. And I find that, so touching, because, thinking that this could happen to our family of 3 is horrifying.
It is.
Yeah. And we quite often look at these things and think, oh yeah, that was back then, but it happened to real people. So I'm fascinated by that, and I find it incredibly cozy. And my teenager is very much into that as well, so we watch a lot of that together. And at the moment, we recently watched one of about looking at historic events from a different angle. Lucy Worsley did it. So she looked at the Great Plague, she looked at the Princess in the Tower, she looked at King George's madness, and sort of with new evidence, reframing the history of it, the witch hunts as well. And so it was really super interesting, and I love that, and I find it incredibly cozy. But I've always been fascinated by that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah, Ruth Goodman's documentaries like Victorian Farm and Edwardian Farm. I love domestic history. Kind of, how did they make food? How did they make clothing? How did they go to the bathroom?
You should see if you can get out of the library Dorothy Hartley's Food in Britain book.
Oh, okay.
It's Dorothy Hartley was a social historian, completely self-taught, who in the 1920s and 30s basically cycled throughout Britain to talk to people and farmers about local customs, because she was feeling that a lot of things were disappearing after the First World War. People were leaving the country to work in factories in the cities, and so a lot of food and recipes, but also tools and things that were very specific to the place were being lost as well. And she documented it with drawing the items, speaking to the people, talking about the customs. And whilst I don't think it's a book that you would read cover to cover, it's a brilliant book to look into and just find funny anecdotes or interesting tidbits. And I always like to bring it out when I read a historical novel, and and it's set in a certain area, and and then I look at a certain area of what did they do in the Yorkshire Moors, that kind of thing. So I absolutely love that, and I find it incredible as well. It's a feat. It's quite a big book, and she did that all by herself as a woman on her own in the 1920s and 30s, when that wasn't the done thing, just going places and talking to people. So
interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely have to search it out. So are we at the 8th cozy thing?
9. We're on 9 now. One of the things I like to do is get a lot of cookery books and craft books from the library and read them as if they're magazines. because that's essentially what they are. And I love that, especially without any kind of performance anxiety of having to make any of it. Yeah, just for entertainment purposes, and the what if, element. What if I cook this, but I don't have to? And I really enjoy that. It is such a cheap thrill, but it is a thrill, and it's incredibly cozy. And when I have some time on the weekend, that is one of my favorite things, to just spend an hour flicking through the books and reading some recipes. And sometimes I might find something that I will actually make. Also in craft books, I might find something that I think, oh yeah, I can do that. But I go in it without the pressure of having to make something. And because I borrow them from the library, I also don't feel like I need to justify the book's existence in my house. If I buy a craft book, if I buy a cookery book, then there's this kind of pressure that you need to use it. But if you're borrowing from the library, I don't need to do anything with it other than just look at it. Yeah, so I really enjoy that a lot. And I will sometimes borrow really wacky things as well. Like recently I borrowed a book about woodworking. I have no ambition at present to do woodworking, but it looked like a lovely book, and it was a lovely book. And I just flicked through it and read some of the anecdotes of the person doing the woodworking and how he got into doing it. He was also suffering from chronic illnesses, and that's how he started to get into woodworking. And so it was really relatable, and it was just it's just enjoyable. It's just a little bit of, as I say, cheap thrill. And it's much better, than buying lots of magazines that you will eventually have to put into the recycling bin.
It's true.
And so, yeah, I really like that. Do you sometimes, I know you're a big library user, do you get cookery books and stuff like that out?
I do. I find cookbooks are one of the book expenses I'm least willing to spend money on. And so I love the library for that. And I'm really surprised at kind of how many cookbooks my library has. And things like they have like a Nordic cookbook, and you know, just kind of any kind of food that you could be interested in making, they'll have some kind of cookbook for it. And it is especially the very visual ones are just a delight to flip through. And some of it's like, I would never make that, but it's really cool to hear how it can be made.
And sometimes it's also really like my husband and I will chuckle at the length of the ingredient list of some of the recipes, where your thing is just like, I'm just tired looking at the list of ingredients, how, and then we will, and that's my toxic trait. I will tot up how much it will cost to make it. And then we laugh about it, because this like meal serving 4 will cost you £60. And you think, at that rate, I just go out for a meal,
Yeah, exactly. No, it's so true. And that's, I really like then on the other end of the spectrum is Jamie Oliver's like 5 ingredient meals. Those are great.
I love those kind of like, quick and cheerful ones, like Nigel Slater. I don't know if he's known in the United States. Where he just like, sometimes he's also like, for a quick midweek meal, I just make some duck, Some
of his stuff are a bit pretentious, but he does, I feel like all of his recipes, you're going to get something very delicious if you make it.
But sometimes it's also like, I like his kind of things have to be cheerful meals, that give you something where you get more out of it than you put in. There's nothing worse than slaving over a hot stove for a mediocre meal. I'd rather have something on the table with minimal effort, but that satisfies like something. So that's just one of my favorite things. And with craft books as well, I got one out from the library just now about making Christmas ornaments. I have no ambition of making Christmas ornaments this year, but I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, that's neat. Maybe next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just like that kind of no pressure. Whereas like if I were to buy it, it would not be cozy because I would feel like I have to get something out of it. I have to make something in order to justify the expense. So, yeah.
The one Christmas ornament that to me, it ended up looking as pretty as the book said it would and was really low maintenance were you get some air dry clay and then how do you say springerly? Is that how it's said?
Oh yeah, springerle.
Springerle.
Springerle, yeah.
I have never studied German.
Yeah.
And you press the clay into that. And I used like a green clay and then it was a pine cone. And so wherever the pine cone, wherever it came out 3 dimensions, I painted it gold. And it looks really pretty. That's the only time where it felt kind of worth all the work.
Yeah. Springerle is like, it's a very big tradition of where I'm from in the South. It's like, the kind of, it's like the cookies, obviously you can make decorations with it, but the cookies are a work of art and very tricky to get right. It needs a lot of practice. But I love them. But if I were in Germany, I would just buy them. Because there's no way I would make them myself.
Now, to the naked eye, they look like shortbread to me. Do they taste similar to shortbread at all or no?
No, they're not at all like shortbread. They're it's sort of it's like they develop feet because it's like a very egg-rich mixture. So it's almost sort of like between a macaron and a butter biscuit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's just like, and it's like the trick is that you need to have a lot of patience making the dough, but then it needs to rest a lot. And the actual cookies have to sit overnight. So they raise off. They develop like, it's like what we call feet, it's like, it's not feet, but they're sort of like a little stand, and then they're baked. And then they have to sit for a while before they become soft enough to eat.
So these are not something you just whip up, Christmas Eve.
There's a lot of work involved and you kind of need a lot of space to do them. And there's companies in Germany, bakeries that just specialize in them. Wow. So my grandmother used to never make them. Yeah. It's just like, because we didn't have a big enough kitchen, it would have just taken over the work. We had the forms, like in German, we call the forms Modeln. Yeah. And, we had the forms for it, but we never made them, because you can just buy some as a treat. Yeah.
And then you wonder,
and they're slightly aniseedy as well.
What's that?
Aniseedy. They're slightly aniseedy.
Okay. So then you kind of wonder, how did these even come about? How did someone figure out how to make these very delicious
it's just like, it's a very, very, it's one of the oldest, I think, Christmas cookies. They, they go back, I think, right down to the Middle Ages. And it's, I don't know how people come up with these, but it's the kind of like craft tradition of making something in winter time, and because you couldn't do much farming, and and having to have an additional income stream, and so these things came about. And I think it was something that came through the monasteries, kind of as a special thing. A lot of these things, actually, if you look at it closely, came through the monasteries.
They were such a hub of
tradition.
Culture.
So
that's interesting too, to think about when the Reformation came. Like, it's possible the recipes could have been lost. How it's kind of remarkable that they survived.
I think by then a lot of that would have been really in the mainstream.
Okay.
It's like I think the baking culture in Germany, and bakeries, as such, like where you buy both your daily bread, but also more fancy goods, like we call them Konditorei, has a very old tradition in Germany.
Okay.
So, and so, yeah, I think it's just really mainstream culture by then.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Oh.
So last but not least is number 10. One of the most cozy things and something that has helped me in incredible ways, and I talk a lot about it in my newsletter Substack thing, is journaling. And I've always kept a journal since about I was 11 years old, but I've never written daily. It was more kind of like, as a teenager, like, oh, someone broke my heart, now I need to write every day, like for weeks, you know, about it, and write sad poetry kind of thing. To you know, processing certain things throughout my life. But about a year and a half ago, I started doing The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron and started writing morning pages. I tried to do The Artist's Way years ago, but the kid was little and an early riser. There was no way I would have been able to get up before them and write morning pages. I would have had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you know, so now that, you know, like they're older, and you know, it was like I can get up a little bit earlier in the morning to do that. And I found this incredibly useful to process you know, the whole thing with the ADHD diagnosis late in life, and you know, processing some of that and dealing with the grief and the what if and all that kind of stuff. But now you know, like 18 months later, I just find that it makes me calmer, more collected, more ready for the day. I can, all those petty thoughts that may creep up, all those little things that niggle at you, even down to the kind of like, I haven't done that yet, I should really do that, come out onto the page in the morning. And because that happens, I feel less stressed about the day ahead, because I feel like I've done my housekeeping with my brain. And I particularly love doing that with my fountain pens. It's like, yeah. And
yeah.
I have you know, I have certain fountain pens that I use for my bullet journal. I have others that I use for my journal, and I just love it. And part of it is that I write 3 pages minimum about whatever. And the other part is that I write 3 things that I'm grateful for every single day. And I think that alone has done a huge shift, because sometimes it's incredibly hard to think about something to be grateful for. And having to think of something to be grateful for is kind of like a good exercise, yeah, in, you know, like not taking the small stuff too seriously. And then I also write everyday intentions. Sort of, they don't change very frequently. They're mostly the same. It's sort of change over time, but it's more sort of like aspirations of how I want to meet my life, my day. And it is both cozy being able to take that time in the morning with my cup of coffee and just writing those 3 pages and just doing that. It's almost a bit like a meditation without being a meditation. And but it's also just incredibly cozy, because I have done one thing before the day even starts for myself. Yeah. And I know, you know, it's just like you have young kids, you know, so I know it would be very, very hard to do that. But, you know, I'm obviously, you know, like, you know, Dharma is turning 16 next month, you know, so I'm like at a different point. But it's also really useful because I'm in the menopause now, and, you know, it's like your image about yourself is changing. And it feels some sort of, you know, kind of meeting myself honestly, It's like a Taylor Swift's new album with, I'm not sure if you've listened to it, but there's one song where she like anti-hero, where she says, I look at the sun, but never in the mirror. And I feel like I've done a lot of that over my life. And I'm now at the point where I look mostly in the mirror, and, keeping the side of my street clean kind of thing. And I really enjoy that. And I find it very cozy. I enjoy writing with fountain pens. It gives me pleasure. I love the ink. I love how it flows. I love how it looks. I love that it makes my terrible handwriting look artistic and something out of a Victorian kind of, correspondence.
Yes.
And, so yeah, I really enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, I have never been good at journaling, but you are making it seem like a worthy endeavor. And actually, I have gotten to the point where I treasure my morning time alone enough. I will set an alarm. I get up a lot earlier. I get up at 6, which to some people I know sounds late, but it's very early for me. And I get a good chunk of time on my own at the beginning of the day.
That's very game changer, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's when I do my quiet time, and also when I read my most challenging classic. So right now it's been The Fairy Queen. That's my time. I spend 20 minutes, I read a canto. And later in the day, I'm not going to feel like it. And then I can say, I'm still making my way through The Fairy Queen, getting it done at the beginning of the day. Yeah.
It's also thing when you have kids, you're fully awake by the time they're up, and any demands they then have of, I don't know about yours, but for me, it was always like, down, wake up, and it was go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's no kind of like, some people have children that slowly wake up and they will snuggle on the sofa a while. My child was always like, I'm up.
Yes.
Yeah. What's
ready
happening now? Yeah.
Yes.
I want breakfast 5 minutes ago. I want to do something. What are we doing today? Yes. What's happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, you're more ready to, and
yes.
It's still like that. Yes, it's still like that. I get up at 5:30, the kid gets up at 6:30, and it's like talk from the moment they descend the stairs. So yeah.
Which on the one hand, you're like, I'm glad, they're a teenager and they're talking to me this much. But on the other hand, it's just a lot for your brain to handle.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be able to do any of the make a lunchbox, listen to the chatter, and stay sane at the same time. So
totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been such a delight, and it has flown by. So thank you so much, Mel, for being a guest.
Well, thank you for having me, so I can tick that off my little bucket list. It's like, Kate asked me, I've done that now.
Well, what's funny too is I never kind of know what someone's going to say when I ask them. And so I wasn't sure if you would be interested. So I was very excited when you said you were. Oh.
I love cozy things, slow living, not necessarily by choice, but by necessity. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, and I hope everyone watching this back enjoys it. And like I said, all of Mel's social media handles will be linked down below. And I hope everyone has a great day.